you check the children? You're a little mad sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes. That is what
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the horror show. I'm Cecil Laird.
And you got Jaime and Fuego here.
And we are here to review the prequel to a movie that we just saw, 4 or 5 months ago, Fuego?
Yeah, maybe even sooner than that. But yeah, and also one of, I think, both of our favorites of the year so far, as like the horror genre goes.
As a matter of fact, yeah, I this is in my top 3 right now. It might be my favorite. I haven't really done that math in my head yet, but absolutely, X was a surprise and something that I knew at the time was going to be in my tops of the year. And then at the end of X, we had a trailer for something called Pearl, and that was a prequel to X that was already shot and being, post-produced so that it was going to be ready for a release later the same year. I don't believe anything like this has ever been done before in cinema.
Yeah,
I mean, there have been same year sequels that have been planned, but never. Here's a movie. Oh, and at the end of the movie that you just loved so much, boom! Here's a prequel story that's coming in a few months. Never before have I seen that, and we're here to discuss that prequel and that whole aspect of it. Again, we're talking about Pearl. So, Fuego, why don't you go ahead and give your overall thoughts for Pearl first?
Okay, so I didn't like it as much as X, but I definitely appreciated the fact that they weren't really trying to go with the same sort of flavor. I mean, one of my favorite aspects about X, as I was saying to you after we walked out of the theater and got done talking to the rep, was that I preferred the camp and the cheese and the additional amounts of humor and the goofiness of X. This one definitely goes for a different vibe. It's very much paying homage, as lots of the press and marketing has been saying, to the golden era of Hollywood. It takes place in 1918, and when just the moving pictures were really first starting to become a thing, and from the score to the costume designing and the sets and stuff like that, and even the performance of Mia Goth herself, who's great in this, has one of the best monologues I've seen in a while in a movie.
Wow, and one of the longest.
Yeah.
It was.
She crushed it.
That was like a good, must have been 5 to 8 minute long monologue, and it was one shot on her, boom, the whole fucking time as she goes through. Oh yeah, we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
Yeah, it was impressive. So, while I didn't enjoy it as much as X, as I already stated, I did quite dig it. I mean, especially from a stylistic standpoint. You said it just before we started filming. Like, Ty West knows what he is doing, man. Especially when we just watched the tiny little teaser for the announcement of the sequel too, called Maxine, that is coming out and going to be taking place in the 80s. So
the sequel to X, not the sequel to Pearl.
Exactly, sequel to X, and it's funny because they're filming Maxine with the triple X, so and taking place in the 80s and stuff. So yeah, man. I mean, I was a little more hesitant about all of this universe expansion for a movie that just came out a few months ago, but I've been quite impressed with what he's done so far, and I'm looking forward to the sequel to X. And,
if this is how a now trilogy like this can come about, if there is a director of such singular vision that he can bring this alive, again, this does not appear like it should be a super expensive movie, except I do think, well, they're both period pieces, right? X took place in the 70s?
In the 70s, yeah.
And this takes place in the teens, right? And there are vehicles that reflect both eras. So I was genuinely, like, for a movie that was shot in secret and kept from the public, it was a period piece to any big budget Hollywood degree, just on a smaller scale.
And doing it in New Zealand, no less, too.
Yeah, I mean, you had 19 teens, Ford motor cars, and shit that was appropriate for the time during World War I, no less. And I'm like, how did he manage this? And how did he get some studio to believe enough in his vision of X, which was already a risky proposition, to fund a prequel to such a thing that is completely different and yet clearly on the same family tree as X? Right,
it shot in the pandemic, no less, too. Right?
Yeah, which they fold in based on a pandemic that was happening at the time.
Yep, the Spanish influenza.
Indeed. So very smart, very well crafted, and honestly, for what it was, getting into my overall thoughts, the more I've been thinking about it, the more I liked it. I, the same as you, did like X more, but that shouldn't detract from how much I liked this for what it was. It's a different story, but it feels so much from the X family. Like, it feels like X's great-grandmother's story. You know what I mean? And so much so that even though it took place in the era in which it took place, it manages to fold in an adult storyline, adult as in a X-rated storyline for the time. And it's really impressive. And it's not that the story we were told hasn't been done before. A woman or anyone really, but specifically there have been stories about women or young girls that will do anything to achieve fame or success, and what lengths will they go to, right? That is essentially the crux of this story, but it felt so firmly planted in the X universe. It was truly impressive to me. Yeah, like, I love this movie on so many levels beyond just the story, which was kind of the most meh level. But the story was completely uplifted by Mia Goth's acting. But then when you get to the layers of the storytelling and how it builds into the X universe, that's where I really fall in love with it. More as kind of a filmmaking side of it, I suppose, than a, story side of it. But nonetheless, I loved it.
Yeah, one of the few detractors that I did have about it was that I found it to be a little predictable. Like, I kind of was guessing, like, how things were going to go with her going from, charming to chilling, and just that sort of downward spiral of sorts. So I didn't really do anything that I was shocked or surprised by, which X actually did. Credit in that regard. But still, I mean, from just a performance and from a technical standpoint.
It did it in such an X way, if you don't, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it really did.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. So, I mean, if that is probably a good segue into story. So, Pearl, which is the old woman from X, the film from a number of months ago, this is back at her young whippersnapper days, and
sorry, but we should mention that if you didn't know, Mia Goth, who played the main lead girl of X, also played Pearl, the old woman, in X. So
heavy makeup.
So now she is makeup free and playing the young version of that character, Pearl.
Yep, and she's in this sort of familiar situation. She's living on this remote farm. She dreams of stardom. She's very wildly imaginative in just her performances to the animals on the farm and weird scenarios that she's envisioning at times and stuff. But yeah, there's kind of a
never looked at a scarecrow that way before.
Yeah, that was a bit weird, but and that's not the only scene where I'm just kind of I'm scratching my head.
So X, it was all so X though.
Yeah, because she's kind of a strange one as you start to realize more and more. Well, actually,
she's an odd duck.
Yes, yeah, especially with what happens at the very beginning, right, with the pitchfork. And so, yeah, she's got
a crazy goose.
Yeah, exactly. Goose. But yeah, so she's got a mother who is constantly just putting her down, and she's not like full blown like physically abusive or anything, but she's definitely mentally abusive and just wants to keep her under her proverbial thumb.
Well, to be fair, she herself is in a rough situation. I mean, they both are. Her husband and Pearl's father has been debilitated by a disease and has to be cared for 24/7. So it's not like the mom is in an easy position.
Yeah, which the mom even mentions at one particular point. She's like, both of our husbands are gone. She's like, Pearl, your husband's off at war because it's during World War I, and then with the disabled father. So yeah, they're both, and it's not a desirable situation, especially with trying to run.
They're both in life jail.
Kind of, yeah.
I mean, it's a really rough way to put it, but I mean, when it boils down to it, people that are stuck in those situations can feel imprisoned.
Absolutely.
So I'm not saying it to be callous. I'm saying it to be descriptive. They're in life jail.
And she strikes up an interesting friendship with the projectionist at the local theater back inside the town, and a little bit of romance without getting into stuff too much. But then she also gets her sights set on this audition that her
love of cinema, you mean?
Exactly. And there's some real. We'll get to it with the filmmaking discussion, but there's some very interesting as far as like dancey sort of numbers from time to time, and so just some of these kind of like dream, dreaming of stardom sequences
That's
pretty good.
Ty West showing off his filmmaking dick, in my opinion.
Oh yeah,
Like just whipping it out and being like, "Hey, here's another version of it. What
Check
do you
that
think?
one.
How do you like it?"
Yeah. So yeah, you've got some predictability about, as I said, the downward spiral and how her mental illness starts to reveal itself when certain things are not going her way, and things get a little
And
worse.
how much of it is mental illness when you're aware of it to some degree?
Yeah. If there's that cognizance, that's being a psychopath, right? As opposed to, yeah.
It's so interesting to see deconstructed in such a way that I've never seen before. It's like it's watching someone with this particular illness sort of try to navigate it. And this is the aspect of the story that was really interesting to me that I hadn't seen. Like, there's a few movies that really American Psycho is one. The House That Jack Built is another, where they start to kind of look at the deconstruction of these characters, and this is on that level after a fashion.
Yeah, and also the fact that as opposed to a masculine character, it is a feminine, so it's a woman obviously, but just it hits a little bit harder with some of the stuff that she ends up doing as the film progresses, because you have to expect that there is going to be murder.
The poster is her holding a bloody axe, bro.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
You know?
and once again, that's to the predictability of certain aspects of it, but the execution
just
of it
because
all.
you know something like that is coming doesn't necessarily make it predictable, because you can't necessarily tell how it's going to come. Same way X. Right? X, you knew those people were going to be killed off, but you didn't know how it was going to happen. Same thing here with Pearl.
Yeah, and I have to, as far as story goes and the writing and stuff like that, the dialogue is pretty snippy at times, and back to that monologue of acknowledgement, which was so well delivered from a performance standpoint and very well written. Mia Goth actually co-wrote this one with Ty West, and I don't believe
big old credit written
Yeah.
by Ty West and Mia Goth, and you know what? I love that, because that says to me they're shooting X, and they're like, wouldn't it be fucking cool if this, and this, and they're like, we should just have a weekend where we write that shit. And then I don't know that that's exactly what happened, but to me, that's what that speaks to me. And it's like, fuck yeah. And it was such a good job, because, like, luckily, Mia has the acting balls to pull off what she pulls off in this movie. Like, she was bold in the first movie. I personally think she's even better in this movie.
I agree.
Like, she has so much more to chew on, and her journey is so interesting to watch. This movie, I don't even know how long it was, but it didn't feel a minute over 45 minutes to me. Like, it moved, and I was on board for her journey / descent the entire way, which is, I think, a good segue into the acting of it all.
Oh, absolutely. Mia Goth, she crushes it in this, man, and just seeing as I just
literally at one point.
Yeah, the egg bit. Yeah, that was good. And yet the fact that you did see an aspect of like whimsy and at times occasional tenderness with her, and
the sweet innocence that she pulls off just with her voice. Like she sounds like a 13-year-old girl at times, where it's just like, oh my God, she's so innocent. And yet there's something bubbling beneath the surface that she reveals later on, and the tone changes, the mannerisms change.
Oh yeah,
like this is
when the rage is coming sometimes. Right?
Like I swear to God, if it weren't for award shows' tendencies to just flat ignore the horror genre, this is, I wouldn't say this isn't an Oscar contender performance. Like, what she portrayed was so well done, and I bought into it the whole way. That's what happens in different genres, and this performance was that good to me, personally.
Yeah, and I have to also give a shout out to the German mother. I thought that she was very
wonderful,
effective. She's very stern, and sparing the rod and all that different stuff.
Very appropriate for the time.
Yeah, and I even thought the projectionist dude, that it was good chemistry, at least initially, with him and Pearl. There's things that happen that alter that dynamic a little bit.
I could see that guy becoming like if the Marvel universe were rebooted today, he'd be the Iron Man.
Yeah, yeah. He had that suave, like, kind of studliness about him. Good,
Mhm.
good line delivery and everything. And just the fact that Mia Goth, back, just to circle back to her, man. The fact that she is like British as the day is long, man.
Is she?
And she is hell British, man. And
What?
she is rocking this
Whoa.
twang like nobody's business, completely convincingly. And
Dude, her scream
yeah.
acting is on point. And the scene between those two, where eventually he has to be completely honest with her and be like, look,
As he's starting to realize the weirdness that she
you're
really
scaring
is all
me.
about.
Like, chill, bro. Like, you know,
Yeah.
the acting was so on point
Yeah.
the whole way through, just like X was. I've been kind of lukewarm on Ty West's past features, but
House of the
this,
Devil and
well, House of the Devil was good.
yeah.
But nothing has really captured me the way these have. And the filmmaking talent, he didn't make the same choices as to do like split screen and stuff like that in this one, but the filmmaking choices were still really solid, and it was a bona fide visual feast through the whole thing. He definitely cranked up that saturation for this film. Every, like, all the greens were super green and the red barn was super red. But honestly, I'm a bigger fan of saturation in film anyway. Like, I live in Arizona, which is bleak and brown, so give me all the fucking colors of the rainbow in film. And the nice thing is when you juxtapose blood against such saturated craziness of just the world around you,
Pops.
you get serious magic. Yep.
Yeah, and just to kind of further get into that filmmaking aspect, it did have so much of that respect and reverence for the golden age of Hollywood when stuff was making that shift from black and white into color. Now, granted, that
And all the
didn't happen
projectors went.
for-
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, when he does veer into black and white with some of her like fantasy sequences, and even at the end, I saw that it did go a little bit grittier with like kind of the film grainness to it during like some of the end credits bits. And
The dance scene, dude, was so well produced as a stage, like an interactive stage play. Like, it was
the one
really...
where she's making the audition, where
yeah, where the background is the war.
Mhm.
It was like, wow, that's so fucking cool, man.
Agreed. She was living it at least for a second there. And
But
so,
I mean, that goes to the credit of Ty West for creating this world and really demonstrating where her head is at, right? She's like, boom, you know, like, how could you say no to this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just loved it. I loved the storytelling. Even though the story was so focused, it was, as you said earlier, a bit predictable. Everything was done with such a higher level of talent, in my opinion, that I feel like this film is more enjoyable on the filmmaker side of things than the story side of things, but the acting carries the story side of things so heavily that it all coalesces into yet another wonderful film-going experience.
yeah, and in this one, I definitely felt more of that creative, collaborative sort of energy between Goth and Ty West. They were obviously vibing, which is why they wanted to immediately make another movie, like boom, right away.
Yeah, that it is palpable. Like the amount of creative juices that were poured into this. And it's exciting to know that once they saw the reaction to X, they started like planning on what is to be Maxine, right? Obviously. We both watched the Maxine teaser just before we started recording, and it felt so in line with the X universe. I'm just like, dude, Ty, you know what? Sign me up, bro. I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm there. So
Definitely.
I don't know. I think that's as much as we can safely say without officially spoiling everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the score. I have to say it
Once
had
again.
this sweeping kind of old school Hollywood, you know, sort of vibe to it. It was very incredibly cinematic, and I don't know. It definitely brought me to this like fantasy whimsy sort of world, which was it was very effective in establishing a calm before the storm sort of effect, which this does kind of at least mirror.
It takes longer than X to get to the nuttiness.
It did.
But
yeah.
once it gets there, it's there, bro. It's in
rolls.
that pocket for the rest of the movie.
Rolls. It rolls. Yeah, there's some interesting makeup effects, and it's not quite as gory as I was expecting it to be at times. But there's.
Oh, there was a section of split screen. I forgot.
at the very end of the movie.
Right.
The weird, the creeped out homage where it was
Yep.
veering a
We
little
don't
bit.
need to the montage. You
Yeah.
mean? Yeah, the creeped out montage.
Mhm.
Gotta have a montage.
Yeah.
Montage.
But yeah, man, I mean, impressive. I really hope it's successful at the box office, and that it more notably than even that, I hope it does get some of that proper critical attention, especially from a dramatic standpoint, because this is like, I'm not going to go as far as to say career-defining performance, because she's been really solid in just about everything that I've seen her in, but this is going to be up there, and she's still so damn young anyway. I mean,
I think this will, to piggyback on what I think you're getting to, this is going to be, I felt the same thing while watching. I'm like, this is going to be the thing that the rest of Hollywood looks at and be like, oh, okay, we need to pull that one out of the horror genre and put her in everything else. I guarantee that that's what's going to happen with Mia Goth. She's going to start to be in period pieces. She's going to start to be in dramatic movies. She's going to start to have love stories. She might do a romantic comedy or two. You know what I mean? She is going to fucking blow up beyond the genre.
As she should.
This. And look, the nice thing is that Ty was smart enough to be like, yo, Mia, before you blow up, let's get that Maxine trilogy money going on. You know what I mean? And who knows if they build such a fucking following and like maybe she'll be like the Jamie Lee Curtis. I mean, well, maybe she'll be better than Jamie Lee Curtis. I refer to Jamie Lee Curtis in so much as she has circled back to her roots in the horror genre, and she has enjoyed this Halloween trilogy run. I don't know that Mia might be of the mindset like, hey, I love this stuff. Like, I'll do this other shit too, but I'm going to stay with Ty and, you know, who knows what we can come up with. But I do believe that, yes, after this, Hollywood's going to start to pick her to do many, many other things.
Yeah, because most of the stuff I'd seen her in before this, it was solid supporting roles, like A Cure for Wellness and Mayday and things like that. And so, but this is like one of those star turn sort of scenarios where she got to be the main lead, the focus. I mean, as you said, that monologue was like 5, maybe 7 minutes long, and it didn't even look like there were any cuts.
And he stopped cutting away to the other character with about 6 minutes left in the monologue, at least. And it was impressive, the emotions that she went through in this one fucking camera angle with no cuts. It's just it is old, like literally, appropriately, it is old school Hollywood type shit.
Yeah, because I mean, back in the day, so many of them had a theatrical background where they had to learn all their lines.
Yeah, you have to deliver that monologue in one go. You don't have a million fucking edits and angles to cut to hide your shit. Old school Hollywood, not washed up Hollywood.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the System of a Down song.
Yep.
But yeah, man, I really hope this gets some critical attention beyond just the horror genre, because I definitely find it incredibly deserving in said regard. Even just discussing it with you, I'm kind of falling into a camp of liking it even more than I think I did right when I walked out of the theater. So.
No, I agree. Walking out of the theater, I was like, okay, but the more I'm reflecting on it, and that happened with X too. It did happen with X2. I remember saying that exact thing almost, where it's like, the more I think about this, the more I like it. And it's the same with fucking Pearl. Like, at first I'm like, it's such a more narrow story than the first one, but I'm like, really, is it? No, it's I mean, instead of a group of people, it's one person you're focusing on, but it's still just, it's not what I'd call a narrow story, it's what I'd call a focused story.
Yeah,
and there's a big difference in that terminology there. And yeah, the more I think about it, the more I like it. And you know, kudos to Ty West, and man, it makes me really want to get Maxine injected into my veins. So.
Damn right, I second that notion. And I mean, just very similar to with X, I think I will like probably take Catherine, go back to the theater, and give this one, like with my A-list or something, a second look, because I want to just kind of dissect it a little bit even more. So I anytime you walk out of a theater and the more you think about a movie, you're like, I kind of want to watch that again, you know? And then that's kind of how I'm feeling, man. So yeah.
I think Marsha needs to watch these too. I think Marsha would really get a kick out of these.
Yeah, the fact that like nobody else besides us had watched X, that's very surprising.
It is surprising, but thank you for making the trip out. I know you've had a
Yeah,
rough week, so
yeah,
I'm
it
glad
was
you were able to
interesting.
make it out. So thank you guys very much for watching. Thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel. Once you guys watch this, let us know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. I'd be very curious to know if you guys liked it as much as we do. But yes, we greatly appreciate, especially if you've watched to this point in the video. Thank you very, very much.
Hell yeah.
So until next time, I've been Cecil Laird.
And gracias, Jaime and Fuego.
And remember, stay
Stay
scared.
scared.